He told me, we knew what they were going to do. They still did it, and we couldn't stop them. And we see that happening here. We see that happening in the Arizona game. We see that happening in the Dallas game. Arizona knew what they were going to do, and the Eagles jammed it down their throats.
Football Friday here on Birds 365. You guys, McMullen and McDonald. And we are joined by Joe Santoliquito, who jumps in with, we got a happy wave for us on a Friday and everything. What are you doing on your bye weekend, Santoliquito?
Work. Work. So
it's always work, Joe. It's self-scouting. What's going on with your self-scout, buddy? During the bye week,
self-scouting, future stories, the high schools, the kids, boxing. It's same old.
Speaking of boxing,
the whole jump around thing with several different sports, including boxing, which you're probably most well known for. But then you want to be able to jump into the Eagles and stay right on top of it as everything else. What kind of grasp do you have? Because John's there every single day. I'm here on Birds 365 every single day. You're in, but you get out, and you get back in, and how does this Eagle team look to you at 6-0 right now?
Fantastic. They're doing what they have to do to win. They're winning in different ways, which I really like. And I go back, and I said it on your air numerous times, knowing quite well, former NFC head coach who told me, and who faced them numerous times each season. He told me, we knew what they were going to do. They still did it, and we couldn't stop them. And we see that happening here. We see that happening in the Arizona game. We see that happening in the Dallas game. Arizona knew what they were going to do, and the Eagles jammed it down their throats. Dallas knew what they were going to do, and the Eagles jammed it down their throats. So right now, the way this team is playing, it's playing with confidence. If we spoke about this. If there's a shaky area of the field, it would be special teams. But right now, there has not been a blunder. Do you fear there's a blunder coming? Yeah, but it hasn't come yet. And it's a very, very simple process. Mr. Covey, just catch the ball. That's all I think that needs to be done. Just catch the ball, young man. Catch the ball. You don't have to run it up the field. You don't have to be a Johnny hero, because there's a ton of heroes on this team right now.
Yeah, well, Britain could use some help with some blocking on special teams. I'd like to see him get an opportunity, but you're right. Until you get that, all you want is ball security. So, the Eagles are plus 12 right now. I don't know how sustainable. That's the one thing, Joe, I look at and say, all right, plus 12 through 6 weeks. That sounds pretty impressive. What sounds even more impressive is number 2 is Minnesota and Baltimore, and they're plus 4. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. Plus 4, and then number 1 is plus 12. That's probably going to come back to the mean, so to speak. That's the one thing that concerns me. And more than the defense taking the football away, they have guys who take the football away. The Hassan Reddicks of the world, the James Bradburys of the world, the Slays of the world. That might continue. But 2 offensive turnovers in 6 games, can that continue?
I don't know if 2 over the next 6 games, but I think the way Jalen Hurts sees the field, I think the way the game has slowed down for him has been a gigantic plus. Still have some issues with Sanders, with ball control, even though he's been so far very reliable with it.
Yeah.
For as much as you want to look and try to find and put the coal miner's hat on with the light, try to peek, there's really not many cracks here right now. I think my only concern are injuries and how these guys hold up. And we certainly saw when Lane Johnson went down. Lane Johnson, it's not even arguably, he is the best right tackle in football. We saw a difference there in that game when Lane went down, even though it was Driscoll that stepped in for him and did an okay job. And granted, actually, when you look at it, he actually did a great job considering who he was blocking against.
Yeah.
That in terms of what's going on with this team right now, that's it. Just whether or not they're able to hold up. Kelsey's a little bit older, even though, again, John, you see everything. This guy's supposed to be in the twilight of his career, and I can't imagine a time where he's played even better than he's played this season.
Amazing player. You know, people, and Jason himself has told his friends on the team, this is it. I don't know if it is it, because if he keeps playing this way, I mean, why is he going to walk away? And football players, you see it all the time with Tom Brady. They go through the grind. They say, do I want to do this again after the season is over? But then they rest and they say, man, I want to get back. I want to get that cafeteria food at the NovaCare complex. I want to hang out with the guys. I think we might see that again with Jason Kelce. Just speculation on my part. Now, he is banged up again. That's part of it as well. I mean, the guy's always playing through injuries, and that's difficult. So that's my bigger concern. And, you know, the bye week as a whole, Joe, it's kind of early, but the strength of this team is the offensive line, and everybody on the offensive line is banged up. Jordan is playing through pain. Kelsey, Isaac, Lane, as you mentioned, Landon Dickerson. Every single one of them is banged up. So maybe it's good to have the bye week this early.
Yeah. Now, Mailata, it's a right shoulder on that have they determined what that is right now? Is it a torn rotator cuff?
Well, they thought when it first happened that he was done for the season. So, you know, they're very happy. He's got very little range of motion. He's playing with a harness. He can't lift his shoulder up above. Now, you don't need to as an offensive lineman, but, you know, it's nice to have that range of motion. So it's all about range of motion and getting his strength back. And if he can do that, he can play through it. But make no mistake, Jordan Mailata is playing through an injury. He's going to be playing through an injury this entire season.
All right. I might be the Grinch that stalled the Eagles season, but if they can get together and cut a Christmas album during the bye week, then get out there next Sunday and be ready to go.
Now that's old, Jody. That was in the can. That wasn't this week. That's been in the can. So yeah, people said that and said Lane Johnson's doing a Christmas album. That was before the concussion. That was not after that's been in the can.
Yeah, understood. But they chose this week. That's the best laid plans of mice and PR people. Yeah, let's put out the pre-recorded video when Lane's got a concussion. It didn't quite work out the way they were looking for it. All right, Joe, I can't even say it's a concern. This is a borderline rhetorical question, but it's not a complete rhetorical question, so I want you to answer it. The Eagles are not only the beast of the East, they're the beast of the NFC, and they're borderline the beast of the NFL. They've never been in this position, certainly not in the Nick Sirianni era. You want to go back to 2017 and say, you knew the Eagles were the best team when they got off to the start they got. I don't know that was the case. And shoot, when they got to the playoffs, they were underdog 3 straight times. So how can you say that we're the beast of all? So it's a different position that they sit right now, and you have a different way of handling everything. The way you prepare, the way you play, the way you think. Should that be any concern for the Eagles that they've not only gotten out 6-0, but they've kind of distanced themselves from everybody, but maybe the Buffalo Bills? Any issues, any potential pitfalls there that maybe they're a little too good, a little too early?
No, because of the foundational pieces that are there. Kelsey's been through this. Lane Johnson's been through this. Miles been through this. Fletcher Cox, certainly Brandon Graham. You have enough leaders there, enough veteran leaders that are also vocal. Because as you guys all know, you can have veteran leaders that aren't exactly vocal. These guys are vocal. These guys know how to tamp things down when things can get a little bit too big. And I think even someone like a Sirianni can even refer to these guys because, again, they've been through that run. They know what it's like. You know, it's not – well, yeah, we are dealing with 5 years now when they made the Super Bowl run. But again, the foundational pieces are there for this team to lean on, and they're strong, they're vocal. Right now, also, it's very, very important that, well, with the exception of Lane Johnson, that they're healthy, and with obviously Kelsey semi-healthy. But again, you have the great type of leadership with this team, foundational leadership with this team that won't let that get out of hand. Those guys, again, know when to speak up. They know the environment. They can read the room to a point. And I don't think those foundational pieces will let this wagon get out of control in terms of the hype machine.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. You know, I must admit, Joe, with the trade deadline coming up, November 1st, and yesterday on the show, Jody will tell you, I said, I don't want to mess with this team. I don't want to mess with this team. I get up early, so I went to bed before the Christian McCaffrey trade broke. And I woke up this morning, and I got to admit, I was like, oof, boy, that looks good for San Francisco. Who could potentially be an issue down the road. It's a difficult sort of decision to make, standing pat or trying to make a splash because you're close and the championship window is open. Where are you with the trade deadline? Would you like them to try to go for that last piece, so to speak, or do you think the chemistry, the connection is too much and play it safe?
In my opinion, I think you play it safe. They have pieces here. I think, again, my only head scratcher would be Covey. But other than that, I think they've been very, very stable across the line. They have been blessed with health. They are deeper than I think any team in the NFL in terms of one of the most important positions I think the most important on the offensive line. And what's the old bromide? I mean, don't mess with something that's not broken. And right now, 6-0, that's a hell of a lot of strong statement. So, and as you guys all know, and the operative word that you used, John, is a fantastic word, is chemistry. I mean, we were all around for that 2017 team, and there was an amazing chemistry there. As a matter of fact, if not for that chemistry, that team would not have won a Super Bowl, because I thought we all had the impression after Wentz went down that there was, this team was driving towards a direction. When Wentz went down, well, that suddenly that was shot, or some of us thought it was shot.
But the Eagles thought it was shot, by the way. The Eagles thought it was shot. It was like a wake that Monday after that injury.
And you see the belief that they had in Foles, which I think helped Foles. And that camaraderie there, that chemistry there, I think is a major force that pulled them through that situation. I mean, that was a team that you don't know where things were going to come from and how things were going to play out, but somehow, some way, the trust in one another, and I think I'm a very strong believer in this, the trust in one another pulled that very special team through to, in the end, become very special. And I think there's certainly a chemistry here with this group. There's no, again, you're down there far more than I am, John. But I got a sense there is no backbiting with this team. I have a sense they are all on the same page. I do know this for a fact, or at least from some of the folks that I still kind of keep in contact with, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But there is an incredibly strong belief in Jalen Hurts. And he is the straw that stirs the drink, to borrow a phrase from our old dear friend Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that makes it happen. Again, his demeanor is incredible, not too high, not too low. And the other thing, too, is, I get the impression in the sense that he knows everybody from 1 to 52 in that team. He's engaging. It's not him and his group aside from everyone else that we know other people have had a history of there with that team. And when they see this, and you have a leader who's a leader with the whole group, not just with certain folks, there's a belief system and a foundation that begins to build. And I think you see all of that now starting to form. And I said it here with you two guys a couple months ago. I saw this team winning possibly 2 playoff games, and I may have been wrong. They may reach the Super Bowl. I mean, the way this is playing out, and you look at the rest of the ragged, and it's a pretty ragged. NFC. We see suddenly, again, in boxing terms, we see all the time, like a great fighter, all of a sudden age overnight. Aren't we seeing those things with Aaron Rodgers to a point? And aren't we seeing those things with Tom Brady? Those would be the two guys. We see, I suppose, today's modern version of the old Washington, that other team under George Allen, win now. The over the hill gang in terms of the LA Rams and what they've built. Now suddenly there's some fissures there. There's some cracks there. You look over the overall picture, who in the NFC really challenges them? I don't think anyone. And I think right now, I think the three of us would all agree the only team that can beat the Philadelphia, well, I think two. I'll put two teams. The only two teams that can beat the Philadelphia Eagles right now are the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh, both in the NFC. Johnny said, let's take a couple of weeks, look back at the 49ers when they incorporate McCaffrey. They might be the toughest foe in the NFC, and he's probably right about that. Let me play devil's advocate on both of you guys for the trade deadline. Here's why I would not be upset if the Eagles made a deal. Now, acquiring a Christian McCaffrey is a big deal. That's a really change the way your team looks and plays type deal. I don't think the Eagles are going there. I don't know that the Eagles even want to go there. But a contributor, a guy who's going to start, a guy who's going to play more than 50% snaps put in on the defensive side. Number one, like you said, on offense, Jalen Hurts is a really good leader. He's going to help the person who's coming in to try and fit and become part of the team and make it as seamless as possible. On defense, to me, they already proved they could do it. They got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, like 20 minutes before the season started?
Yeah.
And they plugged him right into a position that he wasn't playing for his previous team. Oh, by the way, Mr. Slot Corner, we're going to make you into a safety on the fly. And it's worked out pretty darn good. So they've already shown the flexibility to plug and play with guys on the defensive side. I got confidence in Jalen Hurts on the offensive side. I don't think the Eagles are going to take the, oh, my God, we're 6-0. We can't mess with this mentality. If there's a good deal out there to be made and an upgrade on talent, I think Howie Roseman's going to make it.
Where would you see that? What areas do you think they need to improve on? With the obvious exception of special teams. I mean,
and what are we talking about? Running back? Miles has played pretty well. Are we talking about edge rusher? Because Brandon's played really well. Who's going to sit other than, and you brought up Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, that still might be their weakest position. I'll throw that at you, Jody, and Joe. Safety as a whole might be their weakest position. I don't know. Are you going to get better than Marcus Epps or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, probably not. I would say probably another pass rushing guy, an overhang guy, to use the Jonathan Gannon descriptive adjective, if I were to guess if somebody's out there. And the guy who's going to be mentioned, of course, is Burns of Carolina. And it's going to have to be the perfect guy, not a guy who's up on a contract. It's going to have to be a guy who's got at least 2 years control. But if I were to guess on defense, it would be an edge guy. And if it was offense, I'd look to double down on the riches and get another wide receiver. Because I know Quez can get behind the defense.
I see, Quez Watkins has done nothing except for the big home run against Minnesota. I've always thought he was probably the most overrated player by the fan base. I think that's borne out. But part of it is AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert, they're always open. You never get to your fourth progression. What do you need? As long as those guys are healthy, they're always open. Always.
This is a reach for both of you. I have a little knowledge in this area. Do you think, I know DJ Moore's from Philly. That is a sinking ship there. Maybe a third for DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore would certainly make a rich area certainly far richer. Again, it's a reach. I'm just throwing it out there hypothetically. DJ Moore coming home.
Oh, and there was a pretty good rumor going last night that the Packers we're interested in DJ Moore and might make a move for him. Green Bay has got about 22 wide receivers, none of which have stepped up and said, "Oh, I can replace Devontae Adams." I'm not sure DJ Moore can either, but he might be better than the Sammy Watkins of the world that they've been trotting out there. Yeah, it depends on the price tag, right, Johnny Mac? If the price is right, I'd have interest in DJ Moore.
So would I, but how old is DJ? He's I'm trying
28,
to look at 25, 25.
Is that all?
Yeah. I'm like, why?
Why not?
The Panthers are in fire sale mode, but they're trying to get rid of veterans. That's why I say the same thing with Burns. And I've kind of got an in Carolina because our buddy Mike Kay's down there now. They're not looking to trade their young players. They have to build around the Brian Burnses of the world, the DJ Moores of the world. Now, as you know from another Moore, Jody, Eli Moore, the Jets are finally getting good. Elijah, sorry. The Jets are finally getting good, and he's not happy. You never know with an individual player. If they make enough noise, they can force their way out of situations. But yeah, if you told me what was DJ, I think he was a 2018 first round pick. I mean,
correct.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. But I don't know how realistic it would be. And by the way, on the back end of that, guys, how happy would he be playing third fiddle and not getting the football at all? That plays into it as well.
Yeah, right. But what's contract status? This is 5th year, so is he due for a contract extension? DJ Moore?
Let's see, 2018, 2019, 2020, 20. Yeah, this would be his last year. No, actually, he signed. I'm looking it up. He signed a 3-year, $62 million extension with the Panthers. So he's set. They're not trading him. Yeah.
And if I were the Eagles, I don't know that I would want to get him. I would prefer acquiring somebody like that who's on the last year of his deal, who's coming in. Guess what? Come on in, get yourself a Super Bowl ring, and you go out and hit the market next year.
Now more I think about it. Well, they already signed him, so they're not going to trade him. Even though Wikipedia says they already traded him to the Packers.
Right. Like I said, the rumors were flying last night, but it hasn't happened yet.
He caught 87 passes in 2019. He caught 66 in 2020. He caught 93 in 2021. That's a guy who would not be happy as the third guitar in the band, so to speak. I mean, he wants the football. So yeah, that kind of all that stuff factors into it. I don't think it would work, but great player.
Great players having a lousy year, and that's why we're even having this conversation. But I think his contract is the reason you say no. All right. Joey S. with the bye week. Nobody getting any info or insight from Nick Sirianni. Done a phenomenal job. Right now, the favorite to win Coach of the Year. Same exact guy coming back next week with the 6-0 and the divisional lead. Is there any change in modus operandi from the coach who is right now sitting atop the pile as Coach of the Year and with the best team? Do you think we'll see Nick Sirianni do anything different?
No, not really. I mean, he knows what works for him. I think that tinkering phase went on last year. I think he found out what works. He found out what doesn't work. I think I get the impression with him, he's still tempted to play around a little bit here and there, but for the most part, that learning process took place last season in terms of on the field, in terms of knowing the league, in terms of knowing his players and reading the locker room. Right now, again, why mess with something that is certainly working? And then here you look at what's ahead for that. Pittsburgh, Houston, Washington. Unless something major happens, they're going to be 8-0. Then you look at Indianapolis. Granted, at Indianapolis, a little bit of a threat. And then you have Green Bay coming in. It depends on where, again, Green Bay goes. It depends on Aaron Rodgers becoming Aaron Rodgers again. I think we all agree that's probably going to happen. But again, why tinker with success when things are working? And again, you guys already know routine is a huge part of professional sports, and it's a huge part of sports. Period. So you have something here, you have an approach here that's working, and I also sense too these guys aren't getting too built up. These guys aren't getting too high or too low. I think they are following the course of the very equilibrium of their quarterback Jalen Hurts, who is you wouldn't know if he was celebrating a birthday or
No.
winning a tragedy with him. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
all even with the guy.
Yeah.
And my God, I mean, I'm a little bit older than Jalen. I wish I had that even keel demeanor.
Yeah.
But nothing really phases him, and everybody I think is following that leader and taking that approach. Again, you don't mess with this thing right now. It is working right now. It is a gentle, very fine piece of machinery. It's the $200,000 Lamborghini that's humming very well.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to mess with it. At J Santoliquito, follow Joe on Twitter. I want to talk about that coaching staff. I'll last one for you from me because you know John DiFilippo very well. I give John a lot of credit for the Eagles Super Bowl run. I think a lot of people forget there's a lot of revisionist history. When Carson got hurt in those last couple games in the regular season, they were not pretty from an offensive standpoint. The Eagles essentially remade their offense for the playoffs and built it around what Nick Foles was comfortable with, and John was a big part of that. And he was the guy tasked by Doug Peterson to essentially, get in the lab with Nick Foles, figure out what he likes to do, figure out what he does well, and the rest is history. I look at this offensive coaching staff and I see a lot of similarities with Jalen Hurts. Bigger group with Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Kevin Patullo, Brian Johnson. But they build around what the quarterback does well. They don't try to, pound the square peg in the round hole. How much of this run do you give credit to the coaching staff for?
A ton. I mean, they formed nothing. I think this time last year, this was a team in dire straits. This time last year, this is a team that many people had doubts about. They had doubts about Sirianni. They had doubts about Gannon. We could go down the list. They knew what they could do. They adjusted on the run. Hey, we can't win this way. Let's win this way. They ran the ball. And now you see here, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with Hurts. But again, a lot of it's the coaching. I mean, this is basically, and I hear people that I talk to every once in a while around the country, this is the Oklahoma, pretty much the Oklahoma template that he ran in Oklahoma and what made him successful there. And we see him suddenly, we see Hurts emerging more and more and more as a passer. I mean, he did some things, I think, with the Dallas game. There was one open when he missed AJ Brown, and that was about it. They also knew with the heat that he was taking later on, with Lane Johnson being out, well, what do we do well again? Let's go back to what we do well again, and that's running the ball and pounding it at these guys. I also saw too, beautiful again on the coaching. Beautiful game plan and dealing with Michael Parsons. There was one, I remember the one sequence, I think it was a third down, where they didn't block him at all. And he didn't know what to do.
They ran that play three times. They called it's a run pass option. They called it a run pass run. 3 times. And Shane Steichen would have went back to it again if he needed it. The Cowboys couldn't stop it. They put Micah Parsons in conflict. It was the 4th down. It was the A.J. Brown touchdown. It was the Devontae Smith touchdown. Same stinking play. Yeah. They ran it 3 times, and they would have went back to it again. And you're right with the Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma template.
That falls on coaching. That falls on, again, points of attack and how you deal with things. That for years people didn't know. I mean, they knew what Lawrence Taylor was able to do, and they still had problems with him. You know what Micah, and I put Micah in that he's heading in that area. I'm saying he's Lawrence Taylor.
I'm not going to put him there. I got scolded for that, but
not yet.
Who scolded me, Jody? Somebody on the show scolded.
Who scolded? I don't know.
Gary Myers. Yeah, Gary. And rightfully so.
Oh, for comparing him to Lawrence Taylor. Yeah, well, that's a New York guy saying that. You got to keep that in a proper perspective. Lawrence isn't going to be compared by anyone to anybody at any time.
Yeah. Well, no, he's right. He's not there yet, but he's a really good player. Really good player.
And the coaching staff and the scheme knew what to do with him. They knew how to deal with him. And this is also a group that I really like. Again, from the outside looking in, John, again, you're down there not that often. But they're willing to adjust. And again, I deal with I deal with football at every level, high school, college, pro. And you got guys that aren't willing to adjust. You got guys that
you got way more that won't adjust than do adjust.
And these guys are. They are people are going to pick up with what they're doing. We all know that. And I think, and I have the faith right now in Nick Sirianni and his staff to do adjust to that too. Now, it may take some time, as we're seeing here, and they haven't exactly been too formidable in the fourth and the second half. And I think as we go down the stretch, I don't think there's any doubt with the ball to watch here between the three of us that they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubt here that they're going to go, most probably they'll win the NFC East. What I'd like to see as we come down into the midway point and into the tail end of the season, I want to see them down in the fourth quarter. And I want to see I'd like to see a late fourth quarter touchdown. Let's see what this team does with adversity. They still have to face serious adversity. They've faced a modicum of it. Little bit here and there.
Jacksonville, they were down 14-0.
Yeah.
And that was 14-14 before you blinked.
Yeah.
They got right back into it, and it was certainly before the first half. So I think Joe's point is on point. I need your help, Santoliquito. I'm going to come to defense of my partner here. Lawrence Taylor was Lawrence Taylor, arguably the greatest outside linebacker in the history. I don't think it's even arguable. Greatest outside linebacker in the history of the National Football League. And I'm not talking about overhang guys like Hassan Reddick, who is, he might be a linebacker, but he's really a defensive end. We know they played defensive end in college and they converted him to a linebacker. Is there any player since Lawrence Taylor that is as comparable to him as Micah Parsons? And I know it's only a year and change of Micah Parsons, but I think John's right. This kid he's not Lawrence Taylor. If you ever ask me to be a betting man, I don't think he'll ever even become Lawrence Taylor, but he's the most reasonable facsimile since, if you're looking at that specific player. I'm not talking about an edge guy who's more of a defensive, a linebacker, a legit linebacker who's an outside pass rusher. Anybody that I'm forgetting here? Ray Lewis was a middle linebacker. Any type of linebacker? Who's that?
Derek Thomas in that category? Derek Thomas, the Chiefs, from the Chiefs.
Very good.
Do you think of him as a more of a outside linebacker, overhang player, or defensive?
Derek Thomas, he's the old school 3-4 outside linebacker. So he's more of an overhang player. So was LT for that matter. But
he played 4-3.
I know, but he's more of it's a different era. So today he would be an overhang player is what I'm saying. If you moved it, he would be an overhang player. So that's why I always yell. It drove me crazy in the offseason. Are the Eagles 4-3 or the Eagles 3-4? The Eagles are, I don't give a flying, what about 4-3 or 3-4. So things aren't as rigid today as they were back then. And that's why, pet peeve, drives me crazy. But, and that's why I try to judge players in their era because things change. Like quarterbacks, I always point out, Joe Montana, still the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Tom Brady pushes that, but I would still give the slightest of slighted edge for Joe Montana. 92.3. I always remember that number. I tell Jody this all the time. 92.3 passer rating is terrible in today's NFL.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean Joe Montana was terrible.
And by the way, if I had to describe the Eagle defense, you know what I would call it? A 5-1-5. With TJ Edwards.
That's their 5-1 penny look, Jody. They do run that a lot, but they also run a 5-2. They also run in obvious pass rushing situations, it's more of a 4-2. But yeah, they're all over the board. It's not old school.
Can't put an old school stamp on it. Even though we try and do that when we get Joe Santoliquito on, because he's old school, like McMullen and McDonald. He fits in well with us.
The bolts are on.
Exactly, that too. All right, you going to be putting up a column on JAKIBSports.com after, this weekend you got no stuff, but the week after against Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah. I'm the regular, I help my man out. I'm the regular Eagles game guy, game story guy, which is still kind of fun. Brings me back to some other times when there wasn't such thing as game stories. So, we know they're a little bit of a ways of the past, but it's a lot of fun and keeps me in the flow of things. And then
any big fights coming up, Joe, that I should know about?
Well, last weekend I was there with Wilder and Hellenius in New York, which was kind of fun. There's still
I've never been to Barclays for a fight. Is it a good fight venue?
It is. Yeah, there's great angles there. And the scene there, they had 15,000, 16,000 there. So it's pretty cool. And Deontay Wilder, who's, by the way, trained by Philly's Malik Scott, did what he was supposed to do and knocked out a pretty formidable guy in Robert Hellenius. There's still talk that Errol Spencer and Terrence Crawford are going to fight, but that won't come until early to mid-2023. And other than that, really nothing, which is kind of typical boxing because, again, the best have a habit of like what's the saying, like magnets, they repel each other. It's a very interesting sport, to say the least, because it's a sport above all sports that has a tendency to kill itself.
That's true.
Unfortunately.
That's true.
And since we got off on a boxing 10, we'll let you go, Joe. AC doesn't count. New Jersey doesn't count.
Yeah, that's a shame. I wish AC would. Go ahead, Jody. Sorry.
What's the best fight venue in Philadelphia today?
The 2300 Arena. They do a great job. It's tucked in, very close to very close.
The ECW Arena, Jody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They do a nice, really. It's very quaint. They've had it set up where they have like a little ramp right now. They borrowed a little bit from the European style, and with the fighters coming down, doing their little thing as they enter the ring, doing the little ring walk. So
what's it hold?
Yeah. I believe it holds around 2,000. So
okay,
when they jam it up, they can have as many as 2,000.
That's not a bad number.
No Blue Horizon. We need Atlantic City.
How long has the Blue Horizon been gone?
Yeah, it's been gone.
I think now going on 20 years. I can go on a rampage about that, but we don't have the time. We don't have the time for that.
Yeah, not Birds 365. But you got 3 boxing fans here. What the hell?
Yeah.
All right, Joey, it's always a pleasure, buddy. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks. Thanks for hopping on. We'll be reading you the game story after the next Eagles win, and we'll catch you in the Inquirer this week. Thanks, bud.
Gotcha. Thank you, guys. Thank you.